Alright guys, welcome back to another year of Top 10 Comics, and today we are doing Marvel. So I always like to start with Marvel, then I do DC, and then I do creator-owned indie type comics at the very end of the year. But with this being the very beginning of December, I really want to dive deep into all these Marvel comics, and I got a top 10. Now this year has been a little bit of a struggle for me. I had to kind of catch up with comics as I took a break from reading for the first half of the year, but I really got back into it the second half, and I gotta say, there's some great comics I want to talk about today. But remember, I want you to list a few of your favorite comics of this year, and this is just Marvel. So we're gonna have a DC list and a creator-owned list that'll come later in this month, but I really want to focus on Marvel. So put yours below of some of your favorite Marvel comics of the year. Of course, this is just my opinion. These aren't the actual factual best comics of the year, but these are my opinion, the best comics of the year from Marvel. So let's jump right into my list. All right, and coming in at number 10 is Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now this just makes the list because I always enjoy my time with this comic. I feel like it does have some padding. It gets too caught up in the crossovers. Definitely Gang War was the low point of the series for me, or even Blood Hunt. But as we got past those events and more into this year of the more focused events on Miles' life and his trauma and dealing with just being a superhero as a teenager, I really do enjoy a lot of that. I really do enjoy the art. I think the action scenes are really cool in here and really kinetic and very fun to watch. And overall, I think that the snappy dialogue from Miles of being this smart, good kid who also has kind of the street lingo that I come to like from a younger, character or superhero. Overall, all of that combined make this comic just an enjoyable read. It's not one of my favorite, but it's also one of the ones that I just pick up, enjoy reading, and then put back down, which I can't say for some other Spidey comics out there. But this one definitely holds up as just a fun time that brings me back to just the low-stakes adventures of Spider-Man as a teenager. Coming in number 9 is Avengers Twilight. Now, this is a mini-series, or I guess just a single type of story. It's not in the continuity of the rest of the Marvel Universe, and that's okay, because this is a lot of fun. Basically, this is years and years later after an event called H-Day happens, where superheroes are basically outlawed. They're not viewed as positive. What happened during this day, kind of think Kingdom Comes in a lot of ways with this story, but we have Steve, who is kind of just an old man. His serum is worn out. He's kind of just want to sit back and enjoy life, but he can't. He can't just see all the misery that's happening in this world, and he takes the serum, becomes Captain America once again in his old age, and decides to bring back the Avengers. It is a lot of good moments. I wouldn't say that overall it's one of my favorite comics of all time, but I have to say I was really pleasantly surprised at how this story really ended, especially with me not really having any stakes in a story that's out of continuity. I don't usually love these type of stories because they don't do much, and there was a Justice League story a few years ago written by Chip, same style, but this one I think hits harder, mostly because it has moments with characters that really matter. Captain America is written very well here. Thor is surprisingly super well written here. One of the favorite fights I've seen in a long time with him versus the Hulk. And I also actually really like Tony here and his relationship with his son, who is the villain of this story. So overall, if you want something different, if you want some kind of unexpectedly good in a out of continuity storyline that I wasn't expecting good, I think this one really hits the mark. It is a really good story, really well done art too, and just worth checking out if you want to see something different. Alright, my number 8 is Doctor Strange. Now this one sadly ended, but Jed MacKay has definitely put his mark in the Marvel writing universe for me, because everything he writes I'm gonna check out. Now it doesn't always hit. I do think some of the weaker stories like Avengers or his X-Men are okay, but not really for me, or not loving it. But I will say his Doctor Strange is so damn good. It ended up on my list last year, and it stays on this list even though it finished out very strong. I just really love his Doctor Strange. I love everything about his family in this, well, his wife, and I really just like the overall magic sense here. Like, it feels like a magic world I can get into. Sometimes when magic is brought into these universes in Marvel and DC, it's a little too much for me to really get attached to the overall exposition dump that they throw with the magic, but here I'm digging it. I really like it, and I think it has that horror element in a lot of the stories. And this one, while I wish we got one more arc, I really like the last 2 arcs for this run, which kind of finish out this year, or did finish out this year. And I really think if you're a Doctor Strange fan, we've been eating pretty good. This is my favorite Doctor Strange run I think I've ever read, but there's a lot of good ones, and this one holds up there as one of the best, so check it out. All right, number 7 is Uncanny X-Men. Now, I'm really surprised that I enjoyed this as much as I did, because it's been a while since I really loved an X-Men title. Now, I really liked Hickman's X-Men a lot, but the rest of the stories that were going around after that, Immortal X-Men and stuff, they didn't really register with me in terms of something I loved. Most of them were enjoyable, but this is the first one that I really dug, and it's mostly, I think, because Gail Simone focuses on characters. We get a brand new set of kids here too, which are all interesting, and their powers are kind of unique and fun, but we also focus on Rogue, Nightcrawler, Gambit, and Logan, and I think these 4, the focus on them really brings the story home, especially Rogue, who I've never been a mega fan of, but in this series, in this run, I am really liking the direction that Gale is going with her. I thought that they handled a very emotional storyline that worked really well for me, especially with the newest issue that I just read, issue 5, issue 6 out tomorrow at the time of recording this, but really I just loved most of the series. Now, I will say that I thought that they brought in these stakes that got really, really desperate, and then they're like, well, just kidding, here's the superpower to bring you back. So we did get that in the first arc, which kind of annoys me, but other than that, I think the dialogue's strong, I think the characters are great, and I really like the art in this, and it can get really horrific and bloody, so I really like that. So overall, this is the strongest relaunch of the X-Men titles for me for the 616 universe, and definitely worth checking out right now. Alright, number 6 is Ultimate X-Men. So we're running right back into the X-Men, and with Ultimate X-Men, I think this is such a unique title because it's so different. This definitely has a more anime vibe, obviously, from the art, but also just the overall storytelling. It's dialogue light, and when the dialogue is there, it's presented in a way that's more showing than telling, and I really like that. It also gives away into the body horror, which, you know, I'm a massive fan. As a fan of horror, any comic that goes into body horror usually lands pretty well for me, and this one definitely does go deep into that sometimes. I also really like that we're getting these characters that have similar traits or personalities to characters from the 616, including a girl who is just like Cyclops in a way. So things like that really make it intriguing, because I love that the Ultimate Universe can play around with those ideas. So yeah, overall, it's a little bit of a slow burn. Sometimes it feels like the plot doesn't move fast enough, but if you're reading it like me every month and it's just an enjoyable read, I have never thought a single issue in this run has been bad. Maybe not amazing, but hasn't been bad. Alright, my number 5 is another series that sadly ended this year, is She-Hulk. Now, when I read comics, sometimes I want really great drama or dark storytelling, or sometimes I just want superhero flair. And every once in a while, I want this slice of life comedy romance, and that's what She-Hulk does, and She-Hulk does it very, very well. I think it's because the writer and artist really know to give this human feel with the art and dialogue that feels just like a woman who's trying to struggle with a bunch of stuff. See, Jan here is dealing with being She-Hulk while dealing with working for a law firm with a boss who's an asshole, who also has to deal with her love life with Jack of Hearts, who she can't get too close to, otherwise boom, and they all die and explode. And then she also has to deal with girl problems with her friends. So all of this combined has this slice of life feel that I think people, just regular people, can relate to. But on top of that, you get the superhero flair, and you get She-Hulk, which I gotta say, I've always enjoyed a She-Hulk comic. I've never really disliked one. Some were weaker than others, but overall, She-Hulk has always been good. But this is probably my favorite run in a long time, if not my favorite of all time. I don't know how I really feel until I reread it again in a whole, because I read this monthly, but I really do like She-Hulk. I think it's a lot of fun. If you want more of a laid-back style comic, don't have to think too much and just have fun, I think this comic is very much worth picking up, and I wish we had a couple of more arcs, unfortunately. Alright, number 4 is Avengers vs. Aliens. Now, Jonathan Hickman pretty much makes some of the greatest comics of all time. We already know this. But Avengers vs. Aliens, man, what a concept that I would not think would work as well as it does. This basically is years and years later, kind of like Avengers Twilight, where most of the superheroes we know are older. Like Bruce is very old, and Captain Marvel's older. Steve is ancient. Like everybody's very much older. And what really works here is that the aliens are the catalyst for the story. They are invading Earth and quickly, and right into issue 1, which was a really solid setup issue. Some really cool ideas, especially with Black Panther, I really liked. Into issue 2, which really gave Tony time to shine, but also some of the greatest moments I've ever seen with Bruce Banner as Hulk and Steve as Captain America. Some really cool moments, and the Xenomorphs are horrifying because even these superheroes with these massive powers have to worry about these things, and also the fact that they are invading Earth and at this time almost completely taking over. So I'm really intrigued where we go with issue 3 onward. I think it's only a 4-issue series, but holy shit, man. Those first 2 issues, especially issue 2, really made me love this series. If the last 2 issues are as good as those, I think we're going to call this one of those really fun, exciting story crossovers that somehow is better than anyone ever expected. Alright, number 3 is Ultimates. Now, you see me praise this series so many times at this point in this channel. It's one of my favorite series of the year, period, not just Marvel. But what it does is really reinforce the idea that the Avengers here are freedom fighters, are trying to overturn the world that views the Avengers for once as terrorists. And I just loved it, but it solidified itself in with issue 6, which really is this full circle moment where Tony really tries to bring together all these superheroes to be part of the Avengers. And what's great is this Tony is a lot younger, inexperienced. He's not the Iron Man we know. His dad was Iron Man. He's Iron Lad. So it's really awesome to see him start there and make a team of Captain America, of Doctor Doom, who is actually Reed Richards in this universe, and She-Hulk, and so many more, and eventually come into this big explosive finale for the first 6 issues that absolutely is one of my favorite finishing issues of an arc ever. I think it's a great cliffhanger, but it also solves a lot of what are we going to do now, but also fuck, now we're really screwed. So yeah, I absolutely think Ultimates is one of the best. I think its character work on the people like the new Hawkeye, or even older characters like the Doctor Doom in this universe, the Reed Richards, is excellent. So yeah, if you haven't been reading Ultimates, I cannot stress enough that this is one of the best comics of this year. Number 2 is Moon Knight. Now, Moon Knight, I think, has been on my list ever since it began, and it has various places on my list, but I think it's always been in my top 5, if I'm not mistaken, ever since it started. And that's simply because, as someone who has now read every single motherfucking Moon Knight series from the 70s all the way to now, this is the greatest Moon Knight run of all time, at least in my opinion. I think this is absolutely phenomenal. I think Jen McKay makes Moon Knight one of the coolest characters while keeping the corny fun that Moon Knight is. I also think he does amazing work with this group of characters, his side cast. They actually feel like characters I'm rooting for and want them not to die, which is a miracle in a Marvel comic. On top of that, I think that what he somehow did where Moon Knight dies, which is not a spoiler, it's presented everywhere as the death of Moon Knight, and the vengeance of Moon Knight into the new Moon Knight series, all of it flowed absolutely phenomenal. This is easily one of the easiest reading experiences I ever had in terms of the way it flows into the next series, and I'm really hoping this goes on for at least another year or two, because I love this fucking Moon Knight, and this particular Moon Knight is such a badass, but also heartfelt. And the fact that we have a lot of new characters introduced, a lot of characters who didn't get shine for a long time getting shine, like Tigra, all of this shit is absolutely phenomenal. I can't stress enough, I've said it every year since I've been doing these for years now, that Moon Knight is worth reading. It's a top 5 comic, and it is the number 2 comic of Marvel Universe. It would have been number 1 if there wasn't a certain little bitty witty coming up, and we're going to talk about it now. And transition! Wasn't that awesome? No, I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, number 1, Ultimate Spider-Man. So Ultimate Spider-Man is absolutely a home run. I was very excited for this comic. I knew Hickman would deliver at least a good comic. At best, I was hoping a great. I didn't expect it to be one of the greatest, if not my favorite Spider-Man run of all time. It is slowly creeping up there. I think it's actually going to overcome the original Ultimate Spider-Man, which is my favorite Spider-Man run of all time, if it keeps up, if the quality stays, because the greatest issues on this run are absolutely some of the best Spider-Man issues, hands down, I've ever read. And the weakest issues of this run are still better than 80% of most of the Spider-Man comics I've read. And I've read a lot of Spider-Man, people. Yeah, this run just hits every mark. Having Peter as a father obviously is a big plus for me, because myself as a father, I can relate to it a lot more. Having MJ a supportive wife, but also her own person, does a great service for that character. On top of that, you get a Harry that is so different than any other Harry, and easily my favorite Harry in a long time. And you get a Gwen who is so different, but also fierce and a little scary. And let me just say, Ben and Jameson together, oh my god, what a power couple. I don't know if they're actually, you know, coupling and fucking, but as a power couple in terms of like partners and good friends, this is just so fucking good. I love that side of the story about them running a newspaper. So yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man is one of the greatest comics of Marvel in the last 10 years, and I think it's actually one of the greatest comics this year, period. And there's been some really good comics I'm going to get to in DC and Creator Own, but this, hands down, every issue I read, I'm just smiling the whole time because it is that fucking good. I can't believe I have to say this, but if you haven't read Ultimate Spider-Man yet, please, for the love of God, go read Ultimate Spider-Man. And that, my people, is how I'm going to wrap up my first top 10 comic list of the year, with Marvel always being first, because I like to do that one first, do DC second, Creator Own last. Now, I would love, again, to see your list. Put some that you loved. If you don't have 10, that's fine. If you have 5, you have 3. Just list some comics from Marvel that you love, and it doesn't have to be just Marvel superheroes. If you want to put an Alien, Predator, or even Star Wars, put that below. I would really love to see that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, as always, please hit the like button. That means so much to me. It means that I know you guys enjoy my work. If you love this, please hit the subscribe button. I got a lot more videos, including top 10 comic lists coming out this month. And everybody else, have a... That was a kiss. Good day. Okay.